Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again. And today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So we got some pretty big news and change in this OTA that dropped earlier today. And it's about Shang-Chi. This is a change I think not really anybody saw coming, myself included. But I think it's actually a potentially rather positive thing for some of the current cards that exist, as well as maybe more importantly, future cards that might exist down the line. So what happened with Shang-Chi? Well, Shang-Chi has been changed. Previously, he destroyed all enemy cards at this location that have 9 or more power. Now it's 10 or more power. And that's actually, I think, a rather good thing for the game. It's no secret that Shang-Chi has been one of the most popular tech cards for months on months now. He did disappear for a little bit during the Loki season. Since Loki was everywhere, Shang was a bit less effective, but even now when Loki is still a very strong deck, Shang-Chi has started to come back in spades as of recently, and they basically finally decided it was time to give a very slight nerf to this card. Now obviously Shang-Chi is not a card you want to heavily nerf, because it's a pretty important tool for preventing strategies that go really tall from getting out of hand. But the main thing I really like about this change is it opens up more possibility for some cards that already exist. The big winners from this Shang-Chi change are going to be cards that are at 9 power. The 3 best ones that come to my mind are America Chavez, the Evolved Abomination, as well as Living Tribunal. All 3 of these cards add a lot of power to the board, but were previously vulnerable to getting Shang-Chi'd to totally flip the lane on them, since they often made up a pretty large amount of your total power there. Usually you weren't committing extra resources to that lane, unless maybe in Living Tribunal's case, that's the lane you end up stacking with Iron Man and other shenanigans. But this is a really big change. Now you can ramp out your Living Tribunal earlier on with things like Wave or Electro and not have to worry about your opponent dealing with it. That's pretty huge. Chavez is more of a small one, since a lot of the times you're not playing Chavez, but for those times you do end up playing her, or if she pops out of a lockjaw or cheaper off a Loki, you no longer have to worry about her getting Shang-Chi'd. And the Abomination is probably my favorite of the bunch, as I've been testing a lot with the Evolved Abomination recently, and Shang-Chi was by far the biggest thing holding him back, so really nice that he can no longer be dealt with simply by a Shang. So while those cards are the cards that benefit the most, I'm excited in general about this change because it makes it so there is a wider amount of points you can toy with, and it actually changes a fundamental concept we've known for a long time in Snap. One thing you might have noticed is that previously 8 points of power was the kind of sweet spot for a majority of cards. They could get out as much power as they can on the board without your opponent being able to interact with that power via Shang-Chi. For this reason, we saw a lot of 5/8s actually get nerfed because of how strong they were at that stat line. Things like Black Bolt, as well as Legion, and we're still seeing 5/8s like Vision that have nice flexibility being played quite a bit. 8 was the magic number because 8 could not get hit by Shang-Chi. Now we're opening things up to where 9 is now that magic number. One card this feels particularly big for is Rescue. Now, I'm not saying this is going to magically propel Rescue into the meta. I think that card probably needs a little bit more work, but in general, one of the reasons Rescue is so bad and often not played even as much as some of her other 4-cost counterparts in Jessica Jones and Drax was because she got into Shang-Chi range while a lot of these other cards didn't, and that made her kind of an active liability unless you had an armor in the lane or if you were slamming down Professor X as a follow-up, but that was often usually overcommitting a bit too much. So yeah, I think this is a great thing because the numbers in Marvel Snap are small. We've actually talked about this on numerous occasions, and we've talked about it a bit when discussing balance stuff. Sometimes you really wish that you could have kind of like an in-between number, like when Surfer first got nerfed, the nerf felt really harsh. 3 was really overpowered. 2 felt like it wasn't quite doing enough, even though Surfer did get better over time. Some people could probably argue the same with Elsa. Elsa was really overpowered, giving +3. Now +2. It's not bad, it's pretty decent, but it's definitely fallen off a lot. So one number can be a very big point of difference, and now Snap is free to design more 9-power cards that don't have to worry about getting invalidated by probably the most popular tech card in the game. This seems great because now there's an active benefit to running 9 power cards, where previously you wouldn't really want to run a card that was 9 power, because if you were going to run a card that was 9 power, a lot of times you were better off just running a card that was 10 or more power, since they both have the same weakness. One just provides you more power output. But now 9 is the new magic number, gets under Shang-Chi, so there's a lot more reason to play cards that have 9 power as opposed to 10. That's the new breakpoint. It also just feels a little bit cleaner, like they talked about in the patch notes. It was always kind of weird that Shang hit 9 power things instead of 10. 10's that kind of double digit, signifying it's a really big thing. I think it just kind of makes sense from a design perspective, and it opens up more space for cards that currently exist, as well as cards that might exist in the future. Overall, I think this is a great change. Is it going to reduce Shang's play rate? Probably not, and that's okay, because this card is going to be pretty popular as long as big cards are being played. I don't think that will ever change, unless this card changes in a very drastic way, which I don't think would happen. Another thing worth noting is cards that scale upwards also get a very slight benefit from this. This is not going to be relevant a lot of the time, but as someone who has played a bunch with Angela and Sunspot and whatnot, there are games where you happen to have those cards at 9 power exactly, and then you get screwed by the Shang-Chi, so you can get them slightly bigger without having to worry about Shang-Chi ruining your lane. Again, very fringe thing, but there will be cases where this does come up, so you do want to keep that in mind, especially when you're playing with those cards. If you're noticing they're getting big, now you have 1 extra point of breakpoint before you have to worry about getting countered. And to wrap things up, I did want to share some deck lists that I toyed around with that are trying to take advantage of this change. Probably the most common thing I've been messing around with a bunch even before this change was Abomination. After Mobius got nuked, even with him coming back today, I think the high Evo Abomination has been slept on for a while. It's a pretty cool card, and it can be pretty effective getting it down for cheaper energy costs. And now that the opponent can't effectively interact with it, it seems like it gets a lot better. We have 2 high Evo lists here. One is just a more traditional list running a lot of the Affliction stuff, Man-Thing, She-Hulk, Hulk, Magic for extra turn, all that kind of normal high Evo stuff. There is a bit more of an experimental one that is focused around Werewolf by Night that I liked a lot and played a bunch at the end of last season. Found it to be very, very enjoyable and very different than typical high Evo lists. So if you're looking for something a little bit different to do with the Werewolf that also takes advantage of Abomination as well as Man-Thing and some other power reducing cards like Hazmat and Wasp, this is actually a pretty sweet home for both Abomination and the recently released Werewolf. We also have a Living Tribunal list here, which is making use of the new Miss Marvel as well as Onslaught, doubling up on these powerful ongoing effects. Now we don't have to worry about our Living Tribunal being dealt with as easily. We have Invisible Woman as a bit of protection, Wave and Psylocke as ramp magic to get that extra turn if needed, X naturally good with the Miss Marvel stuff, and Onslaught to make really big Iron Man lanes and hopefully win with Living Tribunal. And then the card I want to be much better the most, but am not expecting a whole ton from, Rescue. Rescue finding her way into a Darkhawk shell. Like I said before, I think Rescue probably needs a bit more work, but hey, a 4/9 isn't that bad if you can't get it Shang-Chi'd, and it's a lot less bad if you can potentially get it down on turn 3 with Zabu. So maybe it's reasonable. Maybe that's just a decent enough amount of power output. The opponent can't effectively get rid of it to where the card might be more playable than it used to be. But yeah, those are the lists I came up with centered around this change. As always, those links will be in the description if you want to import any of them to the game for yourself. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you like this change? Do you not like this change? Really curious to hear it. While we're at it, it is worth mentioning they did outline the timeline for the next set of patches we will be getting. There are going to be less OTAs towards the end of the year here. They are skipping the week of the 23rd. However, I think we'll be getting a main client patch the following week, just before the new season. So maybe some changes there, but as we know from the past statements, patches are locked in further in advance, so I wouldn't expect anything in the patch to be trying to address the live metagame, but who knows. But what this does mean is there are essentially going to be no changes until that patch, and then the following OTA, which is going to be on the 7th and then the 21st. So those are the next patches to keep in mind. So we'll see if Shang-Chi or some of the other changes that dropped today shake things up. Personally, still a little concerned about Loki, but we're going to be locking into whatever this metagame has in store for us because it's going to be a bit longer of a period of time without changes than we're typically used to in the past month. But yeah, let me know what you think about all this, changes, all that good stuff. And that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.